Hello again, everyone. Thank you for joining us again. Welcome to episode 8 of Sex Work with the Butterfly Princess and Amy Taylor. Now, this time we're going to discuss feminist arguments against sex work. The work of sex work and feminism is a complex relationship. So in this episode, Amy and I are going to discuss the debate within feminist circles about the work of sex workers, including arguments for and against its legitimacy as a form of work. So I'm sure Amy will have a lot to say about this. So hi Amy, thank you for joining me again. So yeah, what can you tell us about sex work and feminism? Because there's a lot of women out there who are very feminist and believe, that a woman's body is a temple and no one should, destroy that. But, and they see sex work as, that body being destroyed and just used as a piece of meat, if you will.
Yes. So let me first say that both radical feminists and sex workers agree on one thing. We all would like to improve the lives of women and and move away from the periods of time, all of human history, where women had less power. So we agree, we just disagree on how we get there. As they say, everybody wants to improve the world. Nobody agrees on how to get there. So this is true for this too. So there is deep division in their thoughts on the veracity and legitimacy of sex work. Some of them are abolitionists. They would like it simply not to exist. Yeah, that might be nice, but sex workers live in reality where it doesn't. It's not going to disappear. It never has, and it never will. And so we live in the world that is. They sort of think of this aspirational world of abolition, which I think is a fantasy. Some of them support decriminalization. Those are the people on our side. That's what we want. And some support legalization with a lot of regulation. That is not what we want, but where we see that is certainly better than criminalized environments. Those are the worst. So yeah, there are complex realities of our work, as we've discussed, as you and I have discussed in previous episodes. But in the end, we do all want less exploitation and less harm. So from the beginning, we agree, and I wish that we could listen to each other and work together. And I hope someday we can, because in the end, we're actually chasing the same goal.
So, yeah, I just want to now discuss some of the arguments and debates that, feminists sort of argue that, sex work shouldn't be legitimised. One of them is exploitation. Now, we've discussed all these issues in previous episodes, but what is the feminist view on exploitation?
Right. So they think that our work is inherently exploiting us, that it contributes to male entitlement, male sexual entitlement. And they think that it objectifies women's bodies and it reinforces the idea that our value lies in our bodies. Well, our answer is men do like our bodies. That's biology. It's unlikely to change. And a lot of our value has been attributed to our beauty, makeup industry, media, and that is maybe a result of male dominance and feminine subordination, that we've derived value from being beautiful and sexually available. Or it also may be biology, that men like to have sex with us and they want to make children with us, and they do value our fertility as tools with which to perpetuate the species. And those are things that are unlikely to end. I don't see a future where men just don't want to have sex with women or make babies with them. If that existed in 120 years, everybody would be gone. So I don't see that as a viable future. But there are some scholars like Andrea Dworkin, I'm sorry for the dog, and Catherine McKinnon. They've argued that our work is a form of violence against women. I like men and I like sex and I like dating and I don't hate the male sex drive. And I think it's very hard for some women who think that sex with men is sort of something they get and something we give up and hate giving. Some of us, we like to fuck. And they don't believe us. And I don't know that we can ever convince them that we don't hate the male sex drive. It's a fundamentally different way of viewing sex. So
another one is human trafficking and coercion. Obviously, we've discussed all these issues, but again, the feminist argument for on the case of human trafficking and coercion.
yeah, okay, so that one, I grant more legitimacy to that one. If our work is more legitimized, do pimps and traffickers feel more emboldened to coerce more women? Would there be more demand? Would they get more women into it? Because men tend to like fresh and new and somebody they've never met. It's variety. They often like younger, not all men, but many. Would that increase trafficker? We don't see that in places where it's been decriminalized or legalized. We do not see an increase in trafficking. So the data doesn't bear that out. But that is the fear, that it would, from a supply side, it would increase and allow demand. It would change cultural norms. It would be a bigger industry with more people in it. I would argue, even if that's the case, if it were decriminalized and legalized, the workers would have more rights. And where there are abuses, coercive labor, we could address that as a labor issue, just like you can in other businesses, in other industries. When the boss is being awful to the workers, you can address it. There are unions, there's court, there's the law enforcement, and we don't have any of that because our work is driven underground. So again, we want the same thing. We both want less abuse of sex workers. We disagree on exactly how you get there. They think that you can criminalize and abolitionize your way into getting rid of traffickers, pimps, and abusers. We see that criminalizing it actually increases those people's power because you render it an underground economy where the abusers, there's no recourse against them, right? In Calcutta, they uncovered more trafficking when they decriminalized because underage traffic victims were willing to talk to law enforcement in India. So they've accomplished more rescue of underage workers than America has, spending billions and going after and using law enforcement for decades. They've done more in 5 years in Calcutta via decriminalization. So I think the feminists are wrong, but they seem unable to think about decrim as a way to actually give more rights to the workers.
And the third one is the impact on women's rights. Obviously, the feminists argue that legitimising the work of sex workers, which undermines broader feminist goals of gender equality. Now, we hear that a lot in the workplace about equality and rights for women and stuff, but like you say, sex work is a form of work. So, you know, as a woman, as a woman or a male who's working in the sex industry, you should still have rights because it's still an act of working.
That's what we believe. So yeah, I think people's right to choose what they do with their own body includes their right to have sex with another consenting adult, as long as they're not coercing or committing rape, of course. But yeah, I think the feminist idea that women's equal chance for a happy, full life has to include us not having sex with men is just simply sex phobia. I don't think equal rights for women have to include me not having sex with who I want, why I want, when I want. So I view that as just simply hatred of the male sex drive and general sex phobia, which is to me independent of women's pursuit of equal opportunity for happiness.
So let's talk now about what feminists want for sex workers. So obviously they want for more harm reduction strategies, to help sex workers.
Yes, sure. They would like, and I agree with that. They want to prioritize our health and safety, which is correct. regardless of their stance and on the legitimacy of our work, we can agree that we should have access to healthcare, legal services, safe working condition. If we can agree with radical feminists on the realities of our work, then we can all agree on harm reduction strategies, and hopefully we can convince some of these aggressive feminists to also support our rights and our dignity.
And they also want want sex workers to have right of labour rights and discrimination, and so you've got, you know, the tools to fight for more of that labour rights and against discrimination in the workplace.
Yeah, as I explained the Calcutta example, when you drive our work underground, it actually increases dangers and vulnerabilities. In the US, they passed a law called FOSTA SESTA, and that took away websites where we talked about how to stay alive and screen and stay safe. So a lot of the most vulnerable among us have returned to having a pimp, and all the abuses that come along with that have happened. And it has resulted indirectly in the death of sex workers. And maybe some people don't care, but I care. And I hope you do, people who are watching this. So some feminists call for the recognition of our work as legitimate labor. And like you said, all the rights and regulation that would come along with that. And I agree with those moves.
So lastly, in this episode, we're going to talk now about contemporary debates and movements. Now, obviously, we've talked about the Nordic model that's used in Sweden and Norway. We've talked about that in the previous episodes. Now, the feminists support the Nordic model. It's with some aspects of it, don't they?
Yes, the idea is that you would target demand and you would change cultural norms so that men would just simply not feel in demand of sex work labor. Now, you're not going to abolition away the male sex drive. That's biology, and no law passed that goes against biology ever wins. That said, so who will they sleep with when they're horny? I guess neighbors, colleagues, friends, babysitters, relatives, because they're gonna have sex. But the idea is that maybe that sex would be less of a job for the other party. I don't think that'd be a better world. I mean, you're not going to legislate your way into men just being forced to not have sex. That's a delusional fantasy. But the idea is that you would target demand, you would make it so criminalized and so shamed that men would stop wanting sex workers. I don't see that as reality. The data doesn't bear that out as happening. There will always be young people trading on their sexuality because they're broke, and there will always be a sex drive on the other side, the demand side. But this is the idea.
Oh, well, thank you again, Amy, for that really insightful episode. Thank you, everyone.
It's done.